If we want to change the world, to make it fruitful, full of life, we have to stay within the bounds of divine fiat.
Bible and Bitcoin podcast is sponsored by Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is a Bitcoin-only exchange. It's non-custodial, so you don't have to trust them with your Bitcoin. It's feature-rich and always improving. They have a Christian CEO and are an all-around amazing place to get your Bitcoin. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com/pastorcoin and start stacking today.
Okay, so my talk this morning is called, it's nice that this morning because I'm so used to speaking in the morning, so it's like not really too hard for me. So it's the Bible and Bitcoin, the Curse of Fiat, and the blessing of Bitcoin. And I'm sure you've noticed that more and more people are waking up to the reality that the money is broken. My normie friends, my normie family, they all are starting to realize something's not right. The money's broken. You just can go online, go on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you do your social media dopamine hits, and you'll see videos after video of people lamenting that what they used to afford, they no longer afford. It's usually young women in their cars. I don't know why it's young women in their cars, but it's usually a young woman in her car saying, I used to be able to get X, Y, or Z, and now I can't even afford to eat. My rent is too expensive. The food is too expensive, despite the fact that her hair is done and her nails are done, but we won't talk about that. Something is broken. So I asked the question then, what happened? I can remember being in the kitchen during the height of the COVID tyranny. Now, when that was, you know, everybody has a different height of COVID tyranny, but I was telling my wife, I said, I think the government printing all this money is going to have devastating repercussions that are going to reverberate for decades. I just think that's going to happen. How in the world can we sit back and think, it's okay, everything is fine? It's like the meme of that dog sitting in the kitchen and everything's on fire and he's like, oh, this is fine. Slide. When we have a buffoon in Ottawa running the country. Now just take a look at that picture and just draw pleasure from it. A buffoon who says things like, the budget will balance itself. That says things like, budget deficits are investments. Who suggests maybe you should put your home renovations on your credit card. And my favorite, not my favorite, but you know what I'm saying. That taxing gas is somehow going to literally prevent a cataclysmic end-time apocalypse. That you giving more fiat to him will save the weather. He must think we're stupid, or he just really believes this stuff. So it's become abundantly clear that something in our society is fundamentally broken, and I submit to you, a core element of this brokenness flows out of this concept that I've called, human or carnal fiat. Next slide, please. Now listen carefully. Not all fiat is created equal. The word fiat finds its origin in God himself. So go all the way back to the beginning, to the book of Genesis and the creation accounts. And we scarcely get a few sentences in before we're confronted with this concept of fiat. Now, fiat is a Latin word, which means let it be done. And in the context of creation, it carries a weight of royal decree. When God says, let there be light, he's speaking as a king would decree a law or an ordinance into existence. For those who've read Genesis 1 in the creation account, you'll notice several patterns emerging, and one of those patterns is predicated on the word fiat. So Genesis 1:3 says, Is that 3:1? Sorry, my notes are backwards. Says, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Over and over and over, God says, and things happen. Let there be light, let there be water, let there be land. And that English word, "let there be," is the Latin word fiat. It's the Hebrew word haya. Now, I know the Hebrews around here would probably say you butchered that, but that's okay. That's how I looked it up. It's haya, which means to exist. God is saying, exist, exist, exist. He's decreeing things literally into existence. So what the Bible's telling us in this is that everything that exists, now please get this is fundamentally important. Everything that exists in the material realm was made by royal decree, which I've called divine fiat. All value sprung forth and finds its origin in divine fiat. God creates everything by his royal fiat, and he says it's good. Now, we would never say fiat is good, but that's because all we know is carnal fiat. The earth was teeming with life, birds to rule the heavens, beasts to rule the earth, fish to rule the waters, but there's no creature to tend and make the earth fruitful, because animals just do what they want. Animals don't build structures like this. Now, a nest is impressive, but this is more impressive. He makes man to remedy this problem, and he says something to this man that he says to no other creature. He says of the man, "I will make him in my image." Genesis 1:27. Slide, please. Tells us, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Now, I think too many people miss the significance of this passage. You, me, all of us, look around the room. Just do it. Look at your neighbor. Say hello. Be nice. When you look at these people, you are looking at God's image. You're looking at a reflection of God. You are his image. Whether you worship this God or not, whether you believe in this God or not, doesn't change the fact that you are his image. And you live like that. Look at the next verse. What does it mean to be made in God's image? 128 here. It says, God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." So follow me here. If you don't get this, you're going to miss everything else. 1, God creates everything of value by his divine fiat. 2, God creates us to be fruitful, multiply, and rule over everything of value he created. Therefore, 3, our duty is to work within the bounds of divine fiat in order to make the earth fruitful and life-giving. So do you understand the implications here?
Your family, your nation, and your world needs strong men. The devil wants men weak, emasculated, and addicted to porn. This is why I designed the Slaying the Beast course to help men take back the dominion porn stole from them. This course will help you discover your identity as God's image, how porn leverages and twists that against you, and how with God's help you can turn the tables on the beast and live free. There's also access to a Discord server where you can have fellowship with others in the fight. You do not have to wait any longer to conquer this beast once and for all. Go to lifegiverchurch.net to get started today.
If we want to change the world, to make it fruitful, full of life, we have to stay within the bounds of divine fiat. Now, remember at the beginning of the talk here, I said a core element of the brokenness we see flows out of this concept of human fiat. Human fiat is when we step outside the bounds of divine fiat, and this reality smacks us in the face every day. It's irrefutably true. So let's take gender, for example. Divine fiat already royally decreed the order, function, and bounds of gender. I just read it. God created them male and female in his image. When we stay within the bounds, now you might think this is basic stuff, but it needs to be said today. When you stay within the bounds of that, things work. You notice that? They just work. In this decree, we find all the tools necessary to be fruitful and multiply. Right? And like Adam said yesterday, it was good. And it is good. When we stay within these royal decrees, there's health in life. But man in his sin, in his carnal fiat, looks at God and he says, God, I know you said you created them male and female, and I know you said to go forth and be fruitful and multiply. But you know what? Who are you anyways? Like Pharaoh, who is the Lord that I should obey him? I will decree my gender. I will fiat my gender. So now we have objective males, and it could be proven, but we don't want to do that. And objective females who say, let there be gender. Oh, I'm not a female, I'm a male. I'm not a male, I'm a female. And you must conform to my fiat, or else the wrath of God will come upon you. This is carnal and human fiat. It's the root of all sin. The root of all sin is fiat. Not fiat money. That's a manifestation of it. But it's carnal fiat. It's saying, I disagree with what God has said, and I will decree my own way. If it's that way when we speak of gender, and it is. I see you people in the crowd smirking and laughing. Oh, guys being girls, that's silly, whatever. That's ridiculous. And it is. Why then would it not be that way with money? It is that way with money. Think about it. What is money? Next slide, please. Money is the technology we use to store our time and energy. Time and energy are our only truly scarce commodities. It might be controversial to say at a Bitcoin conference, but I think it's true. You have been allocated a certain amount of time and energy. God has given that to you. You don't even know how much. That's how scarce it is. You can't get any more. And money is an intermediary technology we use to represent the value we place on our most precious commodity, time. God has decreed a law into the universe. It's called sowing and reaping. You must sow in order to reap. In economics, it's called production before consumption. Fiat money twists this law, and it decrees carnally, no, consumption, then maybe production. But we'll see. The economy wants to cooperate. Central banks print money. Money's created with no production costs associated. This is why it's called fiat money, because it's decreed into existence on the merit of human institutional authority. It's carnal fiat, and like all carnal fiat, it destroys rather than builds up. And when you devalue a man's money, in a very real sense, you devalue the man himself because you devalue his time. And this proliferates throughout society, and human societies begin to decay, and carnal fiat can only bear the fruit of destruction for so long before you can only disobey God's law for so long before you self-destruct. You want to know God's monetary policy? Anybody interested in knowing that?
Sure.
Okay, let's see what it is. You shall not steal. It's not that complicated. You shall not steal. 4 words. That's all. That should be all of the monetary policy we need in our country. It should just be on a rock or a stone engraved. Where have we seen that? You shall not steal. That's it. It's not that hard. It's a simple command. But in it is a very important presupposition, because this command presupposes property rights. You can't steal if people don't really own stuff. Right? So in the commandment is presupposed you can really own stuff. Why? Because you are made in God's image, and you were royally decreed by the divine to rule and reign and be the stewards of the earth. God created the earth and said, it's yours. Do what I do in it. Image me. And this divine decree concerning money is it must be fair, just, and equitable. The rules of money must be an equal playing field. No one should have the ability to create or control money. Whatever the money is that people use, it must be decided by the free market, not imposed by human institutions. And we've collectively, as a people, spurned God's good and just commandments concerning money. So can we be surprised that our monetary networks and currencies are a complete disaster? Why are we? If you're a Christian in the room, you should not be surprised. You should be surprised it hasn't burned to the ground yet. And you should thank God that He's so merciful that He's let this disaster go on for so long and let us even have an element of prosperity in it. That's the real surprise. It was in 2020, as the world was collapsing, that I was confronted with this dilemma. How can I live as a Christian when I know the very money we use violates God's principles? It was not that long after that Bitcoin came on my radar again. Of course, it was on my radar for several years, but I was dabbling in sorcery and Dogecoins and things like that. But I had the light bulb moment. It finally all came together. Bitcoin. Really? Bitcoin's the answer? Come on, it can't be. But it is. Next slide, please. What's the next slide anyways? Oh, it's a B, of course. This is it. This is the solution. Bitcoin. And I brought this to Christian friends and people in my church, and some of them were like, come on, bro. It's not Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? But it is Bitcoin. The most fair and just monetary system humans have ever built. It's scarce. No one can steal or devalue it by arbitrarily producing more. No human institution can say, let there be Bitcoin. Right? Like there's that meme out there that says, oh, Bitcoin's worth nothing. Okay, well then give me one for free. You can't do it. You can't do it. And most importantly, Bitcoin, and this is my favorite part of Bitcoin, Bitcoin separates money from the state. Because the state is made up of what? Human beings. And human beings are what? Sinners. So Bitcoin separates monetary policy from the sinful inclinations of the hearts of greedy men. If you don't understand how utterly huge that is for freedom, well, I'm not going to say what I want to say. But you get what I'm trying to say. Although Bitcoin's a modern technology, its incentive structure is moving us back to the ancient ways. Isn't that interesting? This new, fancy, modern technology is making us think more like the ancients. How many Bitcoiners are eating beef jerky and starting farms and living like ancient people used to live? Because Bitcoin's incentive structure moves us in the ancient ways. And the Bible says not to hate the, how does it say it? Not to hate the ways of your forefathers. It aligns with God's fiat. And therefore, it is my opinion that this is our best chance of destroying the carnal fiat in the monetary system. The carnal fiat of our wicked government-decreed monies of the world. The money's broken, everything's broken, and we've come full circle, and I'm not suggesting, rather, that Bitcoin will fix the brokenness of the world, not completely. What I'm suggesting is you cannot disobey God. You can only disobey Him for so long before He rugs you. And the rug is well deserved. As Bitcoiners, we're first principles thinkers, at least most of us. And what is the underlying reason why our money is broken? It's because it's the root of sin, carnal fiat. Bitcoin is computer software that's programmatically set to function with fairness and justice, and it's good. But human beings are not. So Bitcoin won't fix our hearts. One time, Jesus' enemies conspired together to catch him in his words, and they figured they would ask him about taxes. But you want to get someone in trouble, ask them about taxes. The ancients knew it, you know it. So they approach him and ask, "Teacher, tell us, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" And Jesus insults them like a true maxi. He says, "You hypocrites." So his first words. "Hey, teacher," they're being nice. "Hey, teacher, should we pay taxes?" "You hypocrites." Then he says, "Bring me a coin. Bring me the coin for the tax. Show me." So they fish around their pockets. "Oh, here's the denarii, a day's wage for a labor, or taxes." It wouldn't be nice if we just had to pay a day's wage. But anyways, Jesus looks at the coin. He says, "Whose likeness and inscription is on this?" And they say, "Well, it's Caesar's." Then Jesus famously says the line, "Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." And at that the people dispersed because he had thoroughly owned them. Again, he mopped the floor with them. So what's Jesus saying here? Is he saying, yeah, pay your taxes? That's what most people think he's saying. But that's not what if that's what you walked away with, you missed the punchline. We know the coin is Caesar's. Why? Because it bears his image. So he says, give Caesar his image back. Is your face on it? Then give him his stupid coin back. But then he says, that's where we end it. Give to Caesar what is all the Christians always tell me, Alan, you got to give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And I say, have you given to God what is God's? Oh, whoops, missed that part, forgot about that part. He says, give to God what is God's. What is God's? Let me ask you the question. Because Jesus asked them, whose image is on this coin? So ask the same question of God. Where is God's likeness? Where is God's inscription? Can you find God's image anywhere? You just looked at God's image. I just told you to do it. You are God's image. You are God's inscription in his likeness. So what's Jesus saying? He's saying, give God his image back. It's you, it's me. You see what Jesus is saying? This problem of taxation and tyranny exists precisely because we are not rendering to God what is God's. That's why. That's what he's trying to get to. That's why they left. And that's why he called them hypocrites. Because Jesus knew, you people are asking me about taxes to Caesar. You asked for this when you forsook God and asked for a human king. Why are you asking me about taxes when you were the ones that wanted this? That's why he called them hypocrites. Because they were like, we don't want to pay taxes. And Jesus was saying, well, you're a hypocrite because you asked for it. Who is your king? Who is your king? Fiat money brings a curse on a people because it demonstrates on a monetary level what's in the heart. It says, forget what God says, I know best. I will decree my own value outside of him. Bitcoin is a blessing because it communicates in a programmatic way. God's word is true. We must sow before we reap. We must have a fair and just system outside of human decree. If that is true on the monetary level, how much more the condition of your own heart? Bitcoin takes us back to God's blessed ancient ways, but only Jesus can reverse the fundamental curse in the hearts of men and women. So this morning, hear the words of the Savior. You are God's image, so give to God what is God's. This blessed Jesus died to forgive you, to cleanse you of all your sin. He rose again to demonstrate who he is, who he said he is. The resurrection is the proof of work, that you can trust everything he says. The time chain of the words of Christ can be trusted because he demonstrated it by literally defeating death. Give all of yourself to all of Him. God bless you.
I wrote the Bible in Bitcoin for you, Bible-believing Christian, and in it I lay out the biblical basis for what money is, why our current fiat monetary system is ungodly, and how Bitcoin is the best and most viable, biblically compliant replacement for government fiat money. There's even a small group study guide in the back with additional resources to study with your church small group. Get it on Amazon or pay with Bitcoin at thebibleandbitcoin.com for a discount.